we were approached by York Minster to create a celebration of their stained glass, and this was as part of a fundraising dinner which they did a year ago. And they're trying to raise millions of pounds because this place has got the largest collection of medieval stained glass in the country, in its walls.
I saw a great multitude, all nations and tribes and languages.
Right, here we are for another AV Jam. We've got Kev and Jace and myself as always, and we welcome the multi-award-winning Ross Ashton and Karen Monid. Welcome, guys. Nice to have you along.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
So, Kev and I got to experience York Minster Northern Lights last week, I think it was. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about it, I said, why do I want to go and look at some flashing lights? But actually, when I got there, I realised how cool it was. And not only that, the amount of and variety of people that were there was amazing. So for me, really, it's how do you end up in a situation where you clear out a nave of York Minster and you create a load of projection, you stick it on a ceiling, you map some audio to it, and you get people from all over the country to come and see it. How do you actually step into that, and how did you get there?
That's a really good question. If you come up with an answer, let us know.
Well,
you did well either way then if you don't know, right?
No. Basically, we were asked by the Minster. So the Minster approached us. They wanted something as a kind of finale, to this huge fundraising dinner that they were holding. So it's one of those, which is supposed to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they managed to do that, and it all went to preserving the stained glass. So they approached us to create a finale for that, and they said, could you do something about the glass, and can you use the inside of the Minster? And that was literally the direction that we got, and we were then to come up with something because that's what we do. So we created this piece which does talk about the stained glass, and it certainly talks about the Great East Window, which is full of this crazy imagery from the Apocalypse, the final book of the Bible. It's the one that everybody knows about from the movies, 666, the number of the beast, all those kind of weird visions. But we wanted to go to do more than that, because we really like to tie the place that we're working into the creative. We want to celebrate the building, and we want to celebrate its place in the city, its history, and we really find that connects with people. One of the reasons we think we got such a fantastic response is that people who came to it realised that what they were seeing was about them, it was about their city, it was about their beautiful building, and it really, touched them. And we were really surprised by the response, I have to say. It's the most fantastic response we've had to any piece of work. But part of that is because it's where it is.
It was great. It was great where I was standing. I don't know if it's the same for you, Kev, but you could hear different comments from different types of people, just in awe and appreciation of the whole thing. And I guess whether you guys hear that when you're kind of hosting it, I don't know. But to be in that space, maybe you need a disguise where you can come into the space and just stand in the middle one time and just pick up a little bit of it. But it's absolutely very impressive.
Oh, thank you.
We did. I had leaving was the same. So obviously I left later when we had our chat when I was there, and as I'm leaving and people are coming in, it was the same. It was the expectation of kind of unsure what's happening, but they'd seen some pictures, And then we were still out. So as then the second session finished and people were walking out, even that lot, the same again, the interest from it. I had a couple of guys, funnily enough, walking through York, stopping me saying, what's happening at the Minster? There's a lot of people coming. At that point, obviously there was a day left and I think it had been sold out. So the guy was rushing online, I was speaking to him, trying to get tickets because he just heard this commotion of people coming out. I said in awe of what had happened. But I'm not 100% sure we got tickets.
Well, that's why we were brought back, because we did it for as I was saying, we did it for this finale for the party, but then that was going to be it. Yeah. And we kind of said to the Minster, look, we've come all this way, it's this a lot of work and great expense to get it into the building. And as you know, most of the expense is getting it there and setting it up. You've then spent all that money. So we said, why don't we open it to the public for a couple of days? So they said, okay, so we will. And it went ballistic. I mean, it sold out almost immediately. People were, again, queuing up at the doors trying to get in. Mm. So that's why we were brought back for the second time. And it did it again, So, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we'll be back there next year doing something new, I think. But, it's one of the most inspiring, most beautiful buildings in the country, and you get to do virtually, within reason, what you like, what you want. What do you want to come up with as an idea? It's not something that happens every day or even every year for us. So.
And I think the Minster were really, I think they were really generous with us because they deliberately stepped back from being too prescriptive because they wanted us to be able to do what it is that we do. Without trying to, control that or knock the edges off. Do you know what I mean? They wanted us to come up with the idea that we do in the way that we do it. And so giving us the direction of working with the glass was literally the only thing. And obviously that's because, it was to raise money for the glass. Mm. So, and that was it. Then they basically kind of just stepped back and let us go, okay, well, this is the vision. This is what we want to achieve. And then I was listening to music and making selections of the different music pieces that I thought would really integrate well with the idea that we had, and all of the other parts of the script and everything else, just kind of pulling all that together into a single storyboard. But I think they were incredibly generous and really very open to the ideas that we came forward with.
I think for me, obviously, when you're there and you hear it, the audio, I'm guessing for you, Karen, that was a challenge in that space, in such a space. Yeah, it's a huge challenge. The reverb is, I've got to know it quite well now. The reverb in there, it's has a point where it triggers, and once it triggers, it's off. It's like letting loose a pile of a whole group of wild horses. I mean, you just can't hold it back. Once it starts going, it just runs and runs and runs. And so you have to control quite heavily. I found I had to control quite heavily how things fed into that. Where was the trigger point, not just for the overall sound, but for each individual element of it. So every voice, every sound effect, where it was coming from, not just about where it was coming from, but how it was hitting the reverb and, all of these kind of things, and just finding ways to integrate that. A lot of my work works on the basis of creating a sort of oral tapestry. I call it it's like a hyper reality. It's real life, but it's kind of more so because I work a lot with languages. Actually, in this piece being another case in point, working with languages like Old English that nobody speaks anymore. So there are ways of kind of combining voices and how voices work to making it quite a tight tapestry. So then it becomes its own sort of sonic world, and I get quite a lot of control over that in terms of how that's built and how that's structured and how the timings and rhythms of it work. I find it's quite musical. And then you put that into the Minster nave, and you watch certain ideas initially. You do your test and you think, well, that's not going to work, is it? And things crumble down a little bit. And I found that the thing to do, and this is actually years of working outdoors. Ross will back me up on this. When you work outdoors, you learn to be flexible.
You have to learn to be really open to what outdoors and what it brings, because it's going to be there. You can't control it. If the wind kicks up, you can't control that. If the rain comes down, you can't control that. You can't control the weather. You can't choose who walks by and when. In the Minster, obviously, you have controlled times that people can come in and out, but outdoors at a light art festival, which is where we do quite a lot of our work, people are just walking up and walking away when they want to, when they're ready to. And so that kind of open form structure means that you sort of have to accept that life and the environment is just going to carry on flowing no matter what it is that you're doing. So I think when the Nave sort of presented me with its challenges, I approached them the way I would approach working outdoors, with that kind of flexibility and that sort of open, and go, okay, well, this is what it does. How can I use that for what it is that I want to do? Which parts of that will really work for what I want to do? And I was able to use that to really enhance things, like in the apocalypse when the thunder goes and the thunder rolls go, to be able to roll that through, and the fireball and things like that. It suddenly became really good to have a reverb right about then. I'll say straight off that all of those effects that I played were dry. They were absolutely dry through those speakers. So every reverb that you hear, and I'm sure you'll hear it on the recordings as well that you're going to play, all of that that's just the building. That's just what the building does. So that gives you some idea of just how much, I don't know, sculpting had to go on, for want of a better word, in terms of crafting frequency response, the frequency curves on what I was playing back and things like that. There's some quite severe things on there that you'd look at and you just go, what? Why does it look like that? And, it's actually it's because once you got it inside that Nave, it worked.
It just
that's what it took to work, yeah.
Fantastic. And you guys won how many awards for this?
I'm sorry?
How many awards have you won for this?
Well, actually, this one only the one.
Just one,
yeah. We won the Event Technology Award 2 days ago, Wednesday.
Yeah. Best use of audio-visual technology.
Yeah, which was quite incredible. If you saw who we were up against, I didn't expect to win it.
Who are you up against? Just out of interest.
So Blitz, Hawthorne.
Okay.
There's one big American company, Opus. They've got a different name in the UK, but big players. And we're not a big company, but something about this seems to grab people's attention.
There's a beauty to it. There is such a beauty to it, and that does make a massive impact.
Well, we're not unaware that you start off at 9 out of 10 because you're in that space. Obviously you've got to do something good, but the space itself is doing it's doing some work for you. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful places in the country, as I say. So if you can do something good in there, it's going to enhance it.
You're responding to the architecture. Again, when we're outside, it's exactly the same. We're always responding to the architecture, responding to the space, responding to the history it's rooted in, responding to the place. All of those things come to have different degrees of influence.
The difference about being indoors is, of course, we could wrap the image over your head, which you don't get the opportunity to do very often. In fact, it's only the second time we've ever been able to do it. And the people aren't, they're not cold, they're not wet. You're not standing outdoors in the winter. You're indoors, so it does have a completely different.
It's so immersive at that point. Yeah. And that was the one thing. That was the last thing actually I wanted to touch on just before we wrap up. Is in a building like that, such architecture, the beauty of it, projection. As seems to have been mentioned a lot in the industry about where is projection going. You could not have done this without projection in any other way. Yeah, and keeping the building as it is.
For me, there's nothing else you can do in a heritage space like that will allow you for it to disappear during the day, for people to be able to see the building exactly as it was. The only problem you've got is sighting the equipment, and we absolutely did our best to minimise it for a temporary installation. I think for a permanent installation, it could have been minimised even more. But yeah, you can't clad it in LED. projection is the only way to go, and it does have a magic in of its own because it does disappear as soon as you turn it off. Yeah.
Projection really works. The stained glass is essentially it's a sheet of colour. It's a sheet of multiple colours, and the minute you project onto a surface, you're producing exactly that. You're creating a sheet of colours. So there's a real relationship there, I think, between projecting onto the inside of that architecture and having that integrate with the stained glass. It works because there is actually a similarity in terms of how they work as in those kind of terms as the mediums that they are. They are.
Well, I hope you do it next year, so I can actually get off my not work and come and see it.
Yeah, I think the idea is that they'd like us to do something different. I mean, whether we tied this in as part of it, or whether we created something completely new, I don't know. But we're due the post-event discussion, and to talk about possible ideas, that kind of thing. That's all yet to come. But I'm sure something will happen because it went so well. So.
The demand is there. The demand is definitely there.
So just before we go, Ross, I just wanted to shout out our mutual friend Chris Netto, because I was sat on Saturday night and he joined us together on Twitter and said, you guys should get together and make a podcast about your show. And I think without Chris doing that, we wouldn't do it. And thanks, Chris. We appreciate you for doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Chris, very much. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. So
don't tell him that. He's going to watch this.
So, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining in, Chris. See you again.
See you later.